Kia ora, Aotearoa, and hello world. You are listening to the Yeah Nah podcast, the official podcast of the New Zealand Skeptics. I'm Bronwyn Rideout, and with me are my co-hosts, Mark Honeychurch.
Hey!
And Katrina Borthwick.
Good evening.
And we are back from a bit of a sabbatical post-conference. I'd say we are now fully recovered from a weekend full of festivities. So Katrina's going to give you a rundown of all the fun things that happened, from the extravaganza to the mixer to our 2 days worth of awesome speakers with both, of course, the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe and many of our local legends. For some, things kicked off just after dinner time on Friday with the SGU's private event, which was their extravaganza of skeptical importance. Katrina, I think you were kind of actually the only one of the three of us to go to that event, so why don't you kick off this episode and share some of your highlights?
Yeah, I was just really keen to go to this because I did not want to fly to America to go to the skeptical extravaganza. And so I went there, pretty full house, and there was some skeptical themes going on in the background, a few tricky games, and some theatre sports. We had quite a bit of that going on through there, so there was a bit of skill, I think, in some of those games where they were on the stage trying to keep up with those things. After that, we, of course, had our intro to the conference, was our skeptical drinks on Friday night, and that was really cool. So I'm not usually a crowd kind of person, but I guess this was the me kind of crowd. And so it was really nice to see some people there that we haven't seen for ages, some case a few years, and just have a good chat. So that was very sociable. And there were some drinks had there as well. And I think some people even ate a few things on top of the drinks. So that was all good fun. And I guess that sort of led us into the next 2 days, set the tone. So we had 2 days. And on the first day, we let the Skeptic Guide to the Universe, coming over from the States, take over our conference for a whole day. And so they did some interesting talks on a wide range of topics. Steve Novella had a discussion about, what to do when skeptics disagree on things, which is quite interesting. And I think that's sort of taking away from that, telling people they're wrong is not the best way to get them to realise they're wrong. And, there's a lot of different ways of looking at these things. And usually the best way is to, talk and actually have real conversations with people. And sometimes people are so far out of the ballpark, you're never going to convince them. So that was an interesting talk. The next one was on string theory. So I'm talking physics here. And that was really interesting, I felt, because I haven't heard string theory come up for ages. And he talked about just that, it still exists. String theory is still out there. And that is about one-dimensional objects vibrating and things. So string theory, yay! But that was an interesting talk. And then there's a bit of a panel discussion, and this was trying to talk about, well, hang on a minute, we'll talk about all these things that are going bad in the world all the time. What are you hopeful about? And so the panel had a good chat about that. They did get a little bit distracted at times, and then they had to be brought back to the hopeful thing. And there was a little bit of American politics, as you can imagine, sort of seeping into their conversations there.
I guess given that the whole panel on the Saturday was American, things are not going well in that country at the moment for science. So there's a lot not to be hopeful about, right? So I could imagine them grasping at straws to try and think of things. Yeah, but so they manage like a decent enough discussion?
I think it'd be quite hard to be apolitical as a skeptic in America right now, particularly, you've got a bunch of people that care about science. Yep, challenging, positive side, but they attempted it. Andrea Jones-Rue talked about using science to understand society, and Cara Santamaria talked about psychotherapy and demystifying that. So she is practicing, they have different names they call the psychologists and things over in America, and she went all through that. It's gone straight through my brain.
Yeah, I sat in on a little bit of that one, and it felt like it was so geared to America that I'm not sure how much utility it would really have for New Zealand. Like, a lot of it was very specific to how things work in the US.
Yeah, my postgrads in psych, and I didn't connect, but I'm probably never going to go to America and be a psychotherapist, so there's that. I was really interested, though, that they almost a doctorate level for everybody and practicing and psychologists over there, which is not what we have in New Zealand. It's a bit more master's level. So it was interesting in that regard that we have some quite different standards around them, but I don't know quite what is contained in their qualification. And so that was quite interesting. Then they did their live podcasts, obviously up on their podcast website. So if you listen to the Skeptics Guide to the Universe podcast, there is one there, and in the little intro paragraph it says live from Christchurch. So if you want to hear us clap, then go and download that particular episode. I think it was maybe the one before last.
When I looked it up to put it in the newsletter from this weekend, it was episode 1100. So if you go and have a look for episode 1100, especially if you were in the crowd and you want to re-listen to what you've already heard once, but see how it is with a little bit of polish and editing, then go and look for episode 1100 of the podcast.
And then there's something called SGU and Friends. I can't even remember what that was. Can you really hear it? No.
I mean, you're asking the wrong people here. And just for some context for the people listening, Bronwyn and I, we took on a bunch of catering work and other stuff for the conference. And unfortunately, it was all in a different room to the main conference room at our venue, Turanga in Christchurch. And because of that, basically most of the conference, we didn't get to listen to the talks, didn't get to see what was going on. And so I didn't sit in on that.
Well, I appreciate you and in particular Bronwyn, who was in charge of many things, including getting us all registered and actually in there. And she actually was brave enough to tackle some of the food, so organised pretty much all of it as far as I can tell.
I do want to acknowledge Hamish Dixon, who is on our committee, and Simon Hoff. Once I was able to get them set up with a computer and all the badges, they pretty much ran that front desk like
they got
machine.
to sit in the room. For all the work they did, they got to sit in the room where it was all happening and listen to the talks. Like, I was out driving half the time like a flipping Uber driver, picking things up from supermarkets.
You need to stop bringing in your car if you don't want that to happen.
What's the reason I bring in the car? I like to be there and useful, even if the conference isn't even in my city. But yeah, so we really didn't get to see much. Thankfully, on Sunday, Johnny did manage to turn on the audio for a little while in the second room, and we heard a couple of the talks. But apart from that, we really didn't get to see much. But the SGU and Friends, I think, did we go in and sit in for 10 minutes of that, Bronwyn? I think we might have done at the very end.
No, I didn't.
You didn't even do that much. Okay.
No. Yeah, so well done you. I just kind of faded into the shadows and then I was, able to watch everything.
Not the only one. Don't you worry about that.
It was just nice to have a weekend without the kids, I have to say. Thank you to the people that came up to me on day 2 and sort of said, thank you for the podcast. So I guess acknowledging the team here. Yeah, thank you, because I guess my secret identity is out now, isn't it? And I was trying to convince myself that nobody actually listens to the podcast, but apparently people do. So thank you.
They do, and they are appreciative. We do have people who do consume it every fortnight and are appreciative. It's just most people don't normally like to give feedback until something goes wrong. So I guess the fact that we don't hear from people very often is probably a positive sign, right?
So day 2, we did have a day 2.
Oh, hang on. Before day 2, we've got the Saturday evening
what
canapes and awards.
Yes.
2 things in one.
Okay, so we'll do the award thing now. I think that makes sense, so we can tell everyone who won and didn't win.
So, on the Saturday evening, we had canapes, and I managed to grab a couple of them. We had quite a few vegetarian bits and bobs there, so I was able to eat something. But it was a good evening. George Rabb did some music. For those skeptics who love skeptical-themed music, he did maybe half a dozen songs, which was really good. Later in the evening, Craig Shearer is always looking for karaoke. He managed to convince George to sit down with him and a few others and strum along to some songs that they could all sing to. So they had a little bit of impromptu karaoke at our canapes evening. But we also had the awards, so our annual Skeptic Awards, or not so annual, given that we're kind of halfway through a year at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know if there's a word for annual and a half a year. But
I guess we'll say biennial, but no, it's a year and a half. So we could have just waited.
At some point, we will be giving out these awards again at the end of the year. But yeah, so we started off, well, Bronwyn started off because she was the brave person on stage reading out the awards, but it was the Bravos, and we had a couple of different streams for the Bravos this year. So we had a couple of articles that were long form, they were investigative, and they were really cool. The first one by Nick Durga, who wrote for Radio New Zealand an article titled "Fake New Zealand Doctors Are Trying to Sell You GLP-1 Weight Loss Products." And it did a really good job of looking into what was going on with the use of AI to make fake videos with doctors telling you how to buy these products, and then gave some really good advice at the end of it, which was speak to your doctor. And the second one was Zoe Madden-Smith, and for One News, she wrote an article titled "Has Got Me a Vial of Peptides in Minutes. AI Teaches How to Inject It." And we've done a little bit. I think I wrote a little bit about these peptides, copper peptide and other peptides, both for the manosphere when we looked into mogging and looks maxing, and when we had somebody request that we publish an article about a peptide. And I couldn't work out because it was such an academic article. There was obviously something weird going on, but it wasn't your usual links to casinos and stuff inside it. And it appeared that they were trying AI poisoning. They were trying to get it so that when someone searched for one of these peptides, that AI would link to their website in order to get some sales.
We've also had an article a couple of years ago when we went to the Go Green Expo. Lifeway, do you remember one of those patch MLMs that was based on the Bible code using lobster DNA? And I am not even kidding with that summary. Their big thing was that these patches had copper peptides as a way to do their healing.
That was the little sticking plaster you put on the back of your neck, and it would power you for days.
Did I write that? I feel like
I think we both wrote a piece. You wrote it from the science end, and I kind of came at it from the MLM.
And that reminds me, I got a vial of something in the cupboard I was supposed to be sticking on my face.
You should definitely give that a try. I'm sure it's fine.
So far, it's not working.
So with the awards, we had a second stream of Bravos, which were podcast Bravos. And there have been some great podcasts over the last year and a half, 2 years, that have done a really good skeptical job. So there was Phil Vine, who did The Lodge for Radio New Zealand, looking at Takaro Lodge in the bottom of the South Island. It's a really weird podcast, well worth listening. Just looking into Aiping Wong and her ideas that she's teaching to her acolytes about being able to do spiritual healing and learning how to fly from her and weird things like this. And of course, she's taking tens of thousands of dollars from people. She's telling them not to get real medical advice, and at least one has died from this. It's horrific to think that this kind of thing happens on our shores. The second one was Murray Jones from the Herald, and he looked into the helpline that the Mormons have for sexual abuse. The podcast is called Heaven's Helpline, and he looked into how the helpline isn't there for the victims of abuse. It's there for the church elders, to get advice, which generally is don't go to the police, keep this quiet, try and get the victim to accept an apology from the perpetrator. But also it's a way of legally covering their asses, because this helpline that the Mormon Church runs, it's staffed by lawyers. And so as soon as an elder phones, all the information that's given over that helpline, it's lawyer client privilege. So they deliberately pay a lot of money to make sure it's always a lawyer that answers that phone, just so that none of it can be discovered for a court case, that it's all basically privileged information that isn't legally available if the victim decides that they want to do something. So it's a really sneaky tactic the Mormons use, and they have this helpline in the US, in the UK, and there's one in New Zealand. I think there's an Auckland-based law firm that staffs the phone for them for this one. And it's a really good investigation into that was done over here for the Herald. And the last one, Bronwyn, I actually haven't listened to Powder Keg yet, but do you want to give us a little bit of information about the Powder Keg podcast?
The Powder Keg podcast by Jonathan Milne through the Newsroom was actually released in 2024. I really referenced that particularly in the second part of my articles on the green powder supplement AG1 or Athletic Greens. Basically, you have all these celebrity endorsements like Gwyneth Paltrow. I'm still getting heaps of ads with Hugh Jackman, who is such a titan of skeptical thinking. My nomination for this podcast was based on how well mill, kind of balances this investigation into that AG1's founder, Chris Ashenden, who's a Kiwi, and this house of cards that he had with his rent-to-own scam, and then how he really leaned in on influencer marketing and the pseudoscience that underpinned AG1's too good to be true claims. Like in one episode, he went to a university and they analyzed the ingredients, how much was actually in there for some of their top-end or very expensive ingredients that they claim to have.
And it's really good to see these. Like, I think podcasts are such a good medium. Like, a story that's 8 or 10 episodes long, I think can be really compelling. And it's a way of, because so much journalism these days feels like it's very quickly written and fire and forget. And like podcast feels like it's a good way of doing long form investigative work, which really is the kind of stuff that I think the skeptics have always liked to see, is these proper investigations getting to the bottom of something. All right, so next, the Bent Spoon. And we had a couple of nominations that didn't make it. They weren't at the rarefied heights of being the worst of the year. A very big organization to have potentially got it. They were nominated for just not dealing with AI fakes, including there was an article written about NZ News Hub. I can't remember which organization created the article, but NZ News Hub, it's a fake news organization on Facebook that is trying to trade off of News Hub, which is one of our defunct news organizations that doesn't exist anymore. And they're just using AI content. There's a bunch of kind of real stories that they post. There's a bunch of fake stuff. There's a bunch that seem to be in the middle where there might be the germ of a real story. But they'll fake the text. They'll just fake people's quotes. They will fake images. They'll just do anything to make it look more salacious and get more clicks. And of course, people have reported this. Nothing is being done about it. We also had Jenny Marcroft, and I think we talked a little while ago about our definitions of woman and man bill, and it was atrocious by any measure. And yeah, I mean, this is politics, but this was, I think it transcended politics in its awfulness. And so the skeptics did put in a submission explaining that it was way oversimplified, that it has risk of causing problems with other legislation, it ignores most of the science, and probably dovetailed really well with what I understand Steve Novella's talk was. A lot of it was about.
There's some really good ways of thinking about the gender situation there. And what was most interesting for me from that was the concept that you don't actually have to apply the same rules in all situations. So there might be some situations where you might have different rules, like some of the sporting was the example he gave. But that doesn't mean you have to apply it to absolutely everything. And I think he also emphasised that we've got a lot of, he didn't use the word, but intersex people that have, ambiguous bodies. And that's actually quite normal. There's a certain percentage. And so you can't just go male and female, even if you wanted to, and not everybody wants to do that. So he was focusing more on the biological side of things. But of course, there is the gender identity side of things as well, which he was focused on. And that's, he's a medical practitioner. So I think that's why he went that way. And that's probably the bit that's being debated the most. So yeah, really interesting, I thought. It wasn't something I'd dug into the weeds of. And it just seemed like there were a lot of really hard questions there that got surfaced.
People are interested in reading our submission. I think almost the day before the conference, or just a couple days before the conference, our submission was actually finally published on the parliamentary website, along with many, many others. There's been a bit of controversy as to the delay and which submissions had been posted to online first. And there were some conspiracy theories emerging about why certain submissions that were against the bill were being excluded, but that doesn't seem to be the case. All the submissions, I believe, are now up, and they had tens of thousands of submissions that they have to go through.
Surprising to hear that there has been quite so much interest in giving feedback, and it sounds like, as I think we talked about in the podcast before, it's unlikely to get beyond this first reading and the select committee stage. National have promised to support it through the first reading, which they did, but National MPs, some of them have quite publicly voiced that they're not impressed with it, that they have other priorities, and so hopefully it's going to be dead in the water. But really nice still to see so many Kiwis stand up negative, and it's good to see so many people speak up and realise that they have a voice and that they can be a part of this process.
So I believe our submission and the NZARH submission, that's up for everyone to read. So if you're interested, go to the parliamentary website and read that.
Awesome. Oh, and I had a hand in both of those. So one of them is, I think, a mixture of me and you, Bronwyn, and another one is a mixture of Sarah Passmore, the head of the NZARH, with me in a supporting role writing some parts. But coming from different perspectives for both of them. The NZARH, chose something of a different perspective, or a different entry point, let's say, to the Skeptics. Anyway, that was quite an aside. Back to our bent spoon, and our winner was Julie Christie. Now, for anybody that doesn't know who Julie Christie is, she runs NZ Worldwide, a video production company. She's done a bunch of documentary stuff and similar things before, but last year/this year managed to create Devotion, the Gloria Vale story, which is also known as Devotion, Obedience, or Betrayal. And we've already covered this on the podcast. We talked with Anka, and we were not massively impressed with this documentary series. It gave too much airtime to members of the members of the Gloria Vale cult, and really, didn't seem like it challenged a lot of what they said. It left them saying things that just seemed not to be true, and then didn't let anybody challenge it from the other side, just moved on to different topics. And the last word was painful. The last word was not very skeptical, not very thoughtful of the victims. It was more about who are we to mess with, Gloria Vale. All right, so the next type of award we have after our Bravos and our Bent Spoon was the Skeptic of the Year. And Skeptic of the Year this year did go to Lee Traynor, who is just retiring at the moment, or has just retired a few months ago from working in academia, moved back to Australasia from Germany, where he was working at a university, and he basically has set up a foundation. He saved a bunch of money, he set up a foundation, and it's got a few aims, quite disparate aims, but one of them is promoting skepticism, and that's really good. And part of what he did with that was that he sponsored scholarships for young people to come to our conference, and we had a few people take us up on that offer, and it was really nice to see them at the conference. The kind of people young enough that we wouldn't often see them coming to one of our events. I mean, white hair is not an exclusive thing at our conferences, but you certainly get a fair bit of white hair in the audience at Skeptics conferences.
Yeah, we had about 5 scholarship winners courtesy of Lee, and they kind of ranged from high school to university age. So yeah, it was really nice to sort of see this younger cohort come in.
Yeah, and it was great to be able to celebrate Lee and thank him for, already just months after his retirement, already being proactive enough that he came to us and had us run this scholarship. And this is something we can continue to draw from. So if we have projects that need money, we can talk to Lee. I think he's hoping to set up a board that will make decisions on where the money goes. He obviously doesn't want it to be just him. He wants it to be impartial. He wants it to keep going. After, way in the future, he kicks the bucket, gets hit by the bus, whatever. And so, yeah, this is something where hopefully it will be useful to the New Zealand Skeptics and will allow us to do more than we would do otherwise with our tiny membership fees that we charge of like $40 a year. So that was the Skeptic of the Year, and in a vein that we hope to continue with, and something we managed to do earlier in the year, was pick a life member, Stuart Lansborough, and we announced another life member at our awards, and that went to John Welch. And John Welch, he's pretty much at every conference. He's been with the Skeptics since 1986, 1987, like pretty much the beginning. Within a few months of the Skeptics organizing and coming together, he was asking to become a member. He became a regular contributor to the journal. He's a GP, which means that not only did he write on a bunch of medical matters for many years for the Skeptics, but we can still contact him now, and we do contact him occasionally and ask him advice on medical-based things, and he's always happy to help out. And it's great that, he's still active. Like a lot of people, when they get to retirement, they kind of fade away from the Skeptics. They find other hobbies, or they find they don't have the energy for it. But there are some people that have been around a long time and are just still around. They're still there every year, and it's really nice to see them, and it's nice to be able to celebrate them with a membership to an organization that they're still active in.
No, it's definitely really cool, and I guess we need to start now compiling our list of who we may want to nominate next.
Yeah, I have at least one on my list. So I'm not going to say it here because we like it to be a surprise. But yeah, I have at least one person who I think we should be awarding. And no, it's not me. I'm not that old yet.
So Katrina, tell us a little bit more. Once Saturday was over and everyone decamped to either more karaoke or to do a bit more drinking, what happened on Sunday?
Oh, yeah. So this day was ours. So it's a normal conference for us with people from around New Zealand. So we started off with Mark Otley. So he's a registered clinical psychologist. He's down in Christchurch, but I understand he's also involved with the Rationalist and Humanist Society as well.
He is on the council of the NZARH along with me. So we have two Marks, which makes it a little bit confusing.
So he was talking about the DSM mental health diagnosis. So the DSM is basically it used to be the kind of manual or the catalogue of psychological disorders. It's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. And so he was sort of going, why do we diagnose or not diagnose? And it was interesting that there's been a bit of a move away from focusing on that manual as such. But also he talked a little bit about self-diagnosis, which is not always a thing. And so that was an interesting talk, particularly given my interest. After morning tea, we had Liz Gregory come in. She is an amazing woman. She is the co-founder of Leavers Support Trust. So they provide a whole lot of support to people who leave Gloriavale commune. And this includes crisis management right through to the kind of support that you see for refugees, like getting a support network in place, getting people, some work, those sorts of things.
To life, right? To living in the outside world, not in a commune where a lot of things are looked after for you, but where, you have bills and you have modern services and everything's a little bit foreign when your whole life has been inside a compound.
So really important, because otherwise, these people are lost at sea. And she was talking about the fact that things like alcohol and drugs, are a risk, for people that are vulnerable. So this can happen when people go out of a long jail term, right? It's a bit like that. You're going out into, modern world that's got a whole lot of things you don't face here, and you might have no friends and nothing in common. And so by connecting with other, survivor, they kind of get, they meet their people in terms of people that have those common experiences that you can't really explain to someone who hasn't been there. So heaps in her talk, and it was just really interesting to me that this was there. So she's right down to driving her car up and picking people up when as required. So it's full service. If someone wants to leave Gloriavale, there is this trust that will help people out and it won't let them slip off the radar, which is amazing. So really impressed by Liz. After that, we had David Leroy, and this was talking a little bit about, so David has got a MSc PhD, so he's been a researcher in a cognitive psych lab, and he's done some work on D and importantly the Children's Memory Research Group. And so he was talking a lot about recovered memories and the fact, how they have been shaped. So he gave some examples of some lines of questioning that kind of lead to the answers, or sort of kind of keep asking the same question until they want you to go away so much that you give them the answer they want. And this has led to some people being wrongly convicted. As well as that, it also talks about, well, if something's happened, how do you get that? What's the right way of trying to elicit that information without causing those issues? He talked a little bit about hypnosis as well, recollections that might come from that and how reliable or not reliable that might be. After lunch, we had Andy Vinash, and he was talking about why, if something's discounted too much, people can become really suspicious of it. So I think in the newsletter, Mark, you talked about 100% discounted tattoos. How many people would want a free tattoo?
Yeah, it feels like there's got to be some catch, right? Like, this is a trainee that's not very good, or it's expired ink and they're just trying to get rid of it. You feel like there's something going on if a tattoo costs nothing and it's just randomly offered to you. If it was a friend, it would be a different matter, but just as an offer off the street, it'd be like, no thanks.
So he was involved in some research at the university where they were offering his stuff. So I think it was cupcakes or something. And for some of them, they were offering them $1 with the cupcake or something. And it just all went weird, as you can, you'd expect that more value someone gets, the happier they be and the more likely they are to take it. But that's just not the case. And they even tried with a robot holding the cupcake at one point to see whether the human thing made a difference or not. I can't remember the answer there. So you have to go and look it up.
I think it was the same. I sat in on a little bit of this talk, and I think the answer was that people had the same suspicion because they figured that even with a robot, there has to have been a human behind the robot programming it.
That's right.
Human must have been
control
involved.
by so people are inventing a concept of mind where there is none. That's just random. What's happening there.
I think this is a really hard thing to study because I think everybody is going to have at least a certain suspicion of the fact that this is a test or that this isn't real. Like for me, that when it comes to something like the trolley problem, that classic problem of which decision do you make? Like my first thing would be like, well, I don't believe it. I don't believe that either one person or a few people are going to die on this. It feels too contrived. How am I in this situation? Like it's not a believable circumstance. And so, I'd probably be kicking and screaming, looking for a third way out of it because it feels too contrived. In the same way with this cookie thing, it's like people are looking outside of the deal. Like, what is it that's outside of this that's driving this thing that makes no sense? Like, if the thing costs less than the ingredients would have cost to make it and the time to make it, there's got to be some reason why they're giving it away. So they have this suspicion, but it seems like a very sensible suspicion to have about what the hell is going on in this scenario.
Yeah, and they did say that where there was sort of a partial explanation, then people were more likely to take the cookie or muffin or whatever it was. So like if they said, look, we've got these left over and I just want to give them away, get rid of them, will you take one? Then people were more likely to take it than if just here, have a free. I'm not sure that if a random university student walked up to me and offered me a free brownie, I'd want to take it, but I wouldn't be sure what was in that thing, but who knows? But yeah, I mean, I guess students are hungry, so anything could happen. The final speaker is, so he is in marketing, so he's an MBA director at the University of Canterbury. So he was a bit more involved with sort of digital technology, consumer identity, social change, and so he was sort of talking about how we can change minds to help the skeptics movement. So I guess that's sort of something we might need to lean into if we are mainly grey-haired people with new age people that might be influenced by other things other than a printed newspaper. Do they still exist? I'm not sure.
Surprised by that one. I sat in for a few minutes of it again, and the bit that I heard, because he was, part of the idea of the talk was talking about how we could market the skeptics, and I was expecting it to be, you've just got to be kinder and nicer, and he was actually, you've got to have a selling point. You've got to have something people want, and it might be that you're kind of, you know more than other people, that you try and learn the truth of things, and that superiority of being able to have a more informed opinion than other people, that might be your selling point. And I thought, yeah, maybe that is for a lot. Like the idea of, I know enough to be right in an argument more often than not right. That might be a good selling point. I liked that idea.
It's a bit different. And I guess that's sort of a counterpoint to the talk we had in sort of day one about when skeptics disagree. There's some sort of joining there, in terms of convincing people over to the skeptical side. So he was the speaker, and then we had the panel conversation following that, and lots of questions from the audience as part of that. It was sort of a wide-ranging conversation. I don't know if you caught that one or not.
Yeah, I did catch some of it. So I'd asked, because we lost our MC just before the weekend started, he managed to catch the flu. So we were running around on the Friday evening trying to sort out who was going to run things. And it was Michael Edmonds who was both going to MC and run the panel. And so I had to drop on Sarah Passmore last minute. Please, can you help us? Please, can you run the panel? And I've done this to her before. I think I've dropped it in her lap at one of our Skeptics conferences with half-hour notice. So giving her a day and a half notice, I think, was rather generous of me. But I just wanted to see how it was going. And Yeah, I mean, I never need to worry with Sarah. She was doing, I think, an amazing effort of making sure that, because there were quite different personalities by the looks of things on the panel. And I think she did a really good job of making sure all of them were included and got to have questions that they could answer fully, which was really nice.
Yeah, I think next time maybe we just need to be careful about the gender balance, because the one female was Sarah.
Yes,
I just saw them up there and I went, okay, whoops. Maybe
it's something we generally try to keep an eye on, and conferences, if we drew a graph of our male-female representation, like some have hit 50-50 and others have swayed into the men territory quite far. It would be nice just to run a conference where we deliberately just ran into the almost exclusively or exclusively women talking for a weekend. I think that would be kind of fun to do.
To be fair to Johnny, we did have Liz, but Liz could not stay for the panel. And also, he did ask whether myself or Mark would do a talk about the history of skepticism. Plus, had things maybe gone really, really south, we could have done it, we could have just totally bored our audience with a live recording of us again, as we do every year. So that could have easily made the gender parity a little bit more female friendly. But you make a great point in terms of bringing more diversity to the panel, not just in terms of gender. Yeah. But I think those who did speak were fantastic, from what I was able to hear.
Absolutely, yeah. Not their fault, nothing to do with them. If it's anybody, it's on us, and it's something we need to be always vigilant about. We've had it at times before where we've hit near a 50-50 gender balance, and then people pull out, and before you know it, you find yourself with a big skew that you hadn't even planned for, where you've got a lot more male than female. So it's really tough to do, and we do keep trying, but it's hard work to maintain that balance.
If you are a female and you are wanting to speak at the next conference, now's the time to start thinking about it.
Speaking of which, Bronwyn, how did our AGM go? You had a chairs report that you read out, and it did talk about our next conference. Do you want to give us a quick overview of what you covered?
I mean, I think one of the things I really always want to do with my chair report is to actually acknowledge all the people who make the committee, our conferences, and all sort of the other activities that we support happen. So, I mean, it's thanking the people, our team who runs the Skeptics in the Pub, which isn't necessarily a New Zealand Skeptics Society activity, but is something that is so closely related to our work that, who knows the difference anymore. So it's thanking James, it's thanking Craig, it's thanking Robin Capper for their effort, because really, being somebody who will show up at the same place, same time, once or twice a month is actually quite a bit, particularly because it's a highly social role. I was also thanking all the people who helped out with the conference. So that's Tim Atkin, Sarah, James Brown, who kind of stepped up and, as we said, did the MC role, Nathan Grange and Brian Pava, who were there helping Johnny set up the stage and all the IT and the sound stuff. In terms of our conference for next year, one of the main points I did want to get across is that we are really keen to kind of get back into our activism. I think, Mark, you've said before, you want to be a menace. And I think wanting to be a menace to society as an organization is a great goal.
Our event was canned last year, and I think as a society, we really don't do much in the way of projects. There isn't much that, as a committee, we go, right, we're focusing on this thing. And I've got a couple of things on the boiler at the moment, and I've been a little bit bad at getting them finished. But I think as a committee, we have so much potential to be problematic, as you say, be a menace, go out there and basically hassle people who need hassling, and try and bring people down a peg or two that have a position in society that they just don't deserve it, because they're scamming people, they're taking their money, selling them stuff that doesn't work. And we really need to point this out in any way that we can figure to show that they are not good people. They might think they are, they might think that they're saving people with their Acupa or whatever, but it doesn't work, and they're burying their head in their sand about the lack of evidence, and they are a net force for the negative in New Zealand, and I think we need to do something about them.
Yeah, prior to the conference, I was interviewed by Emil Donovan on RNZ Night's radio show, and he was asking me questions about the mass poisoning that you guys had, about 10, 15 years ago? The mass poisoning of homeopathic products?
Yeah, that was before my time, but that was, the overdose, I think, was done in Christchurch. It'll have been organised by Vicky Hyde, but yes, overdosing on homeopathy, which obviously is a a fairly risk-free thing. So it's funny to see those kinds of things, but they really are the kinds of things that can capture people's imagination, and it doesn't take much to organize something like that.
The reason why we did can last year's conference was because the invitation from the SGU to come to New Zealand and help them run an event, was pretty appealing for the committee. So when we put out a survey to the members, the big feedback that we got was, hey, I wouldn't go to this year's conference if I knew the SGU were coming next year. So it made sense financially for us, as well as financially for the members, to just have one conference in 2026. But because we want to have this goal of kind of really getting back to our skeptical activism roots, in order to do that, we need to not have a conference this year, or I should say 2027, but we'll bring that back in 2028. However, if you still want to get your conference jollies, the NZARH is having their 100th anniversary, their centennial, and we'll be in the backgrounds helping them out and help them hopefully have a great event as well.
Yeah, and hopefully that's not just going to be... So the event is planned for Auckland, but hopefully not just Auckland. The Humanists have supported the World Congress of Humanism back in 2018, and we were able to have an event in Parliament, which was really nice. And I believe the NZARH are hoping they can organise something similar, that they can find an MP who will be a sponsor and have like a private event, like a ticketed event that people can come to, just to celebrate 100 years of rationalism and humanism in New Zealand. That rationalist part, aligns really well with the skeptics, which is why we want to be involved. And we also have expertise of having run our conferences nearly every year for 40 years. We've got a lot under our belt. We know what we're doing. We don't want to take over the conference, certainly. I don't think we have the manpower to run a conference in Auckland, but we have offered to help and give a little bit of our expertise and advice. Yes, for everybody that's in Auckland and skeptically aligned, next April is the 100th anniversary, and I believe that's when we're currently aiming to have the conference running. So that would be conference time for us, and a few of us skeptics will definitely be there. And then after that, then it will be, that's another 20 months, 19 months or so until our next conference will be sometime at the end of 2028.
What I want our membership to keep an eye out on your emails. We are going to be reaching out to people more, inviting them to have some feedback on some educational materials that we are starting to develop, or onto any other activities. We will be reaching out and asking people for their opinions. I think one thing that was really awesome to see is that by having this conference in Christchurch for, what was it, like the last time was in 2019? Was that the last one in Christchurch?
Sounds right, yep.
Yeah. There was so much interest and so much energy from the Christchurch members that it looks like we're going to have a Christchurch Skeptics in the Pub, or some sort of skeptical activity starting up again. So there is a real power to having these big events, everyone getting together. It's important to help our members in all the corners of New Zealand, to empower them to start these events. And we're going to start to figure out a way we can formally, if financial support is needed, help people start up skeptical events in their town, because I think that's going to be the really big outreach that we need to do.
It's been unfortunate that Christchurch has kind of gone quiet, that the Skeptics in the Pub event stopped happening. And I think our advice from Wellington, given that we don't have a speaker, we just have a social event, is like, speakers are good, and when you can organize them, that's great. But if you can just keep the regular cadence by having social events regularly, and then maybe, every few months, if you can find a speaker as well, that's good. But outside of that, just meeting regularly, chatting about skeptical stuff with friends, and keeping an event going. I think that's the important thing. And hopefully, with the new people that we've met, including a committee member who joined our committee at the AGM and is in Christchurch, hopefully between a few of them that are enthused for conference, we will see the Skeptics in the Pub event starting up again soon.
Yeah, and that's going to be really, really exciting. So yeah, that was the most important message I have for my AGM, that we really want to try to reinvigorate our core activities for both the committee, to get more of that output, to get more of that profile of skepticism out there. So yeah, that was kind of our AGM and our conference.
Yeah, so that was the end of the conference. What did we do after that? We went for a beer?
Yep. Well, we went on a massive tour of downtown Christchurch trying to find a place to have a beer.
That's right. And we did find a really nice place that we had a few beers, and just a few of us having a nice chill out afterwards, a bit of a relax and chat. It's always nice to do after a conference. And thanks to everybody at the end of the conference that helped pack down as well. Like, there were a bunch of people that jumped in and helped us putting the chairs away and sorting out some of the stage and the audio equipment, taking the excess food to City Mission and other places to see if it would be taken.
Thank you to Paul Hargrove. It was Paul Hargrove and Anka Rita who did that for us.
Yeah, there were a bunch of people that kind of jumped in. We offered the food away to people, and some of them just looked at it and went, we should take a bunch of this to a charity that might make use of it, which was really good. And then all the like paper plates and cups that we'd bought that were excess to requirement, they went as well in the hope that they could be used. So that was awesome. And yeah, we managed to get out of the venue pretty quickly, decamp to the pub, and then just have a few hours of chilling out. And then the next day, I had a fun day. I'm going to tell you about my day now. On Monday after the conference, so myself, Sarah, and Tim had to drive up to Picton in order to get the ferry in the evening. So it was a fairly chilled out day. Now, I have a large collection of vintage ties, and it's really hard to find vintage ties, especially to find them cheap. But in charity shops in the middle of nowhere in New Zealand is about the best place you could ever hope to get them. And so I said to my travelling partners, we will be stopping at every charity shop between Christchurch and Picton, which we did. But then I very quickly realised once we started doing this that charity shops in the middle of nowhere are a goldmine for all sorts of stuff. And so we started looking through the books, and I found a couple of books written by the person I'm still investigating for plagiarism. But I also noticed that there were a bunch of interesting CDs, and so I made a rule very quickly that the only music we were playing was CDs that we bought in charity shops, that they had to be the worst CDs we could possibly find, and the only time that we could switch for another CD is when we stopped. And it was horrific, like a bunch of country music, Christian, country, and rock and roll. We listened to the entire Bible Man album.
What?
But yeah, basically a superhero, it's the Bible, who basically sung to children about how the Bible is the only book they need. And they don't need science books, they don't need art, they just need the Bible. That's all it is they need. And then Tim, I think he found the cream of the crop. He found, when we were in Blenheim, an Answers in Genesis audio CD. The front cover was a guy with a guitar sitting on a plastic triceratops or some other dinosaur. And it was just a whole album of him singing along about how evolution is a lie and the Earth is 6,000 years old. And it was absolutely horrific. And that was our journey back to the ferry after the conference. So now I have the weirdest collection of CDs in my car, like country music, Christian music, George Formby. It is such an odd CD collection.
Sounds like it was a barrel of laughs.
For some description of barrel of laughs, yes, it was.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for that, Mark, and Katrina, for your summary of the conference. Before we say goodbye, it is time for Membership Corner. We do have a few activities that are coming up over the next couple of weeks. The next Auckland Skeptics in the Pub will be on September 1st at 6:30 p.m. at the Dyson Fork. The next Wellington Skeptics in the Pub will be on September 4th, starting at 6 p.m. at the Intercontinental Hotel in the hotel lobby lounge. So come and meet us, meet myself and Mark and Katrina. It's great drinks, great fun, great food. And in terms of other non-New Zealand Skeptic events, still waiting for some updates from the Bay Area Skeptics regarding the third annual Global Skeptics in the Pub. That's looking to be held in either October or November. For those who haven't heard of this event before, essentially it is a 24-hour online skeptics in cyberspace meeting. Every hour is hosted by a different skeptical group around the world. And for the past 3 years, New Zealand Skeptics have been the ones to start the event and close it out. So if you want to meet skeptics from Asia, India, across America, the US, and Europe, this is the time to do it. It's always a great time, and I've always heard some really great feedback from other members of some fantastic ideas they've heard of what other groups are doing for their membership and for their activism.
And it's really nice for us because it starts on the Friday evening usually. It means that if you want to connect during the day, it's Saturday. It's not a work day, so you just kind of connect in sometime during the day. I connected like Saturday lunchtime a couple of years ago, and Eugenie Scott was there on the call. So yeah, there's some kind of skeptical big hitters, really fascinating people who are still an active part of their local communities, and through that will end up connecting to this Skeptics in the Pub online event.
And then finally, 2026 Decult Conference. Early bird tickets are on sale now. Please visit decult.net and get your tickets. This year's event is going to be held on the 21st to 25th of October at the Limes Room in the Christchurch Town Hall. There's also several other events that are happening, being hosted by the Olive Leaf Network and the KIP Network, or the Cult Informed Professionals Network, in which speakers like Rachel Bernstein are offering trainings before and after the conference. And I believe there's a Survivors Day that's going to be happening after the conference. So go to Decult, and if you can't go to the conference, try signing up for one of the workshops or the Survivor Support Day. Support Anka and this fantastic work that she has done over the past few years.
So there are online tickets if you want to just connect online and stream it. And I think there might be a second tranche at the moment of student tickets that are pretty much half price. So well worth grabbing one of those if you are a student.
Alrighty, well, that's it for us for this episode. If you have any questions, queries, kudos, comments, or concerns, please email us at podcast@skeptics.nz or newsletter@skeptics.nz. And we will be back with more skeptical news in a fortnight. Ka kite!
Until next time.
See you. Goodbye. Au revoir.